This is going to be a super basic beginner's intro to making your own resin molds and casts. As a bit of a backstory, I am a full-time artist that originally started out by selling my little clay charms at conventions. Now that I'm primarily an illustrator, I don't have the time to do every sculpt from scratch. Aside from that, there were always various clay factors that led to issues such as being too hard, too soft, falling over while baking, drooping, etc. Resin is a way for me to try to go back to my roots by being able to sculpt once, then make a mold of it, and then turn it into either a charm or magnet or anything that I wanted. With that being said, there are numerous ways to make molds and various forms of resin. I'll be covering the one that I found that was the easiest with minimal errors. It is a mold putty that once you mix it, it kind of works up like clay. You have to mix it completely and then you place it over the top of your sculpt. And then that's whenever it forms and hardens, and after about 30 minutes, you're ready to pull your clay out and then pour your resin in. This method is very basic and can really only make the cab style, which is the flat back, by the way you put it in there. These work great as magnets and pins, and some can sit well on desks as little figures. In this video, I will make the candy corn magnet, as that is something any skill level should be able to try. The clay I'll be using is super Sculpty. It's an oven-baked clay. A lot of the clays are around $3 a brick, and I can make quite a few of these little sculpts from it. The mold putty is the alumalite mold putty. It's very easy to use. You just grab equal parts of each and mix it together, and then you just roll it over the top of your sculpt. And even though we're doing an incredibly simple design for this video, you can see that some of the molds I have more detail. That's the little mermaid bunny. And then the little hollow knight, this is the clay. That's the mold, and then that's the little magnet that I made with it. As far as the resin, we'll be using the alumalite resin. It is in 2 parts that you mix together equally. My favorite part of this resin is the precision tip that each bottle has. It just helps me measure properly. A lot of the times with the bigger tubs of resin, it just has an open mouth and it's usually very messy. As far as mixing the resin, I'm going to be using these little plastic cups. They have markers on the side of them. And even though in most resin videos you'll see that they do part A and part B and then pour it together and mix it, I'm actually just going to use 1 cup, only because I've learned that a lot of my resin errors came from whenever I poured, the residual left behind was enough to make it not equal anymore. So I just use these markers on the side, so I'll just do equal parts of each and then mix it directly in 1 cup. Once the little resin casts are finished, I'll be painting with craft acrylic paint. These are incredibly cheap. They're around $1.50, $2 each. You do have to use multiple layers, but it's a good way to get started without having to invest a lot of money. The top coat is going to be using the Gloss Exterior Interior Varnish. I usually do a couple of coats of this for durability, and it just helps protect the paint. I have disposable gloves when it comes time to actually pour the resin. You want to try to protect your skin as much as possible. You also want to work in a well-ventilated room or with a respirator if you have it. Once the cast is made, I'll be using these super strong magnets. I bought these at the Daiso store, but craft stores have them as well. And then you can also do these little pin backs if you want to wear on a lanyard or shirt or anything. Then as far as tools, I have popsicle sticks for mixing the resin, and then I have a variety of different size brushes whenever it comes time to painting. For fine details, I have this firm rubber tip. It just helps me with the eyes, and then for the eye shine and the little mouth, I just use a little pencil. To start, I'm just going to grab a little pinch of clay. I'm going to make one a little bit smaller than the first candy corn. You can use however much you want. As you can see, the mold can take some level of detail. I'm just doing something simple so it's easy for all skill levels, just to get the basics down. If you've not worked with the polymer clay before, it does take a little bit of kneading. Some of it is more firm than others, but once you soften it up, it's really easy to sculpt things with it. And if you want to hide fingerprints and stuff, you can just smooth it out. If you press it, it's going to leave a fingerprint, but if you smooth it, it's going to get rid of it. Once it's sculpted, you're going to place this in either your oven, or if you have a little toaster oven, it needs to bake at 275 for about 15 minutes. Now that the clay is baked, we're going to go ahead and start making the molds of it. You have to be careful if you're working on a silicone mat, just because this will stick to it. So you can buy these little tiles from, I think I got this one from Lowe's. It was probably 20 cents for it. They're really cheap, and I have, I think, 4 or 5 different sizes, just depending on the project I'm working on. So we're gonna go ahead and just grab a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and grab one for each of those that I made earlier. I'm just going to do one at a time, just because it does set up fairly fast once you get it completely mixed. Rolling it helps to smooth it out, just because if you have any creases or anything in it, it's going to show on your clay. So say I had it like that and then push the clay on it, that crease is going to stay. So you want to roll it and get it as smooth as possible. And then the top is going to go like that, and you just carefully push it around it. Make sure you keep pushing it against your sculpt. That way it's flush up against it and you don't have gaps. And I do lift it a little bit higher around the edges, because whenever you pour the resin in, you want to make sure you have some walls. That way it can sit in there. And then I try to flatten it on the surface. Because one of these, I think my Hollow Knight, I didn't flatten it properly, and so the mold leans and all the resin flows that direction. So I just put another piece on the bottom to help even it out. This one I'm going to make sure they're equal parts. Yeah, they look about equal. Once that's finished, you let it set for about 15 minutes, and then you'll come back to it and pull the clay out. Now that the 15 minutes is up, we'll go ahead and demold, and you just pop it out. Then we are going to start with a very small amount of resin. A little bit goes a long way, so I'm going to have a couple other molds on standby to fill up, so I'm likely going to pour too much. I think I'm going to try the 5cc mark. That way I can fill all these other ones. But this part we will need the gloves on. I'm going to start with the B first, only because it's a little bit thinner and doesn't pour as well. So I'm right at 5cc in there. Go ahead and use a paper towel to wipe off the excess, or else it's going to be hard to get the cap on and off later. Next, I'll take part A, and I'm just going to pour until it gets to the 10cc mark. And this I'll wipe off as well. Now take a popsicle stick and mix thoroughly. Sometimes if you don't mix it well, you'll get some that never hardens. Sometimes based on humidity and temperature, you'll get some that hardens very quickly on you. There's just a lot of random things that can happen with resin. It doesn't necessarily mean that you did anything wrong, it's just kind of trial and error. Once that's mixed, set that aside. Then go ahead and slowly pour, especially if you have figures that have a lot of details. That way it helps fill all of the little pieces. And as you can see, that tiny amount filled 4 little molds up. Now we're going to let it set for about 15 to 20 minutes. You'll notice that the color will start changing. I usually make sure that it's more on the 20-minute end, just so it's completely set up and you don't take it out and put fingerprints or anything in it. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and demold and start the painting process. So I usually loosen it up just a little bit and then pop it out. I usually start with a white base on most of them. This Hollow Knight, I'm actually, if you're familiar with the game, I'm going to do the shade version, or whenever you die, he turns into the little shade version, and that's going to be all black with white eyes. So I'm going to do black on him. But these three, since the candy corn has the white top, and since these colors are lighter, I'm going to start with a white base. And then this one is the rice ball, so I'm going to start with white on it too. And this does take about 4 to 5 coats, maybe more, because it goes on pretty thin. The black will probably only need 2 coats. I'm not going to sit here and do every single coat, so I'm going to skip ahead and do the remaining coats of the white, and then I'll pick back up when it comes time to do the other colors for the candy corn. Go ahead and switch to the orange, which is going to be the middle stripe of the candy corn. This one I think took me 2 coats last time. Sorry, that was my dog burping. I have a Great Dane, and she's very pleasant. And that's the little pit bull that is interested in what I'm doing now. This one is really crooked, so I'm going to thicken it up a little bit to try to straighten that out. The little one is also crooked. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the yellow, since for the most part it's not going to be going on top of each other. It should not mix. The yellow seems to have really good coverage, so I probably will just do the single coat of it. I'm going to move on to the black for the rice ball, and then I'm going to let everything dry so I can start on the face. are just going to wait about 15 to 20 minutes, and then I'll show you how I do faces on my little sculptures. For the face details, I'm going to zoom the camera in a bit, only so you can see what I'm doing. This is the tool that I'll be using. It is an angle chisel from Color Shaper, and it's actually from the clay department to help you sculpt, but I use it to make the kind of stamp the eyes and stuff on. So I just dip it into the paint, and then I'll do the whites first. I don't know how well you can see that. And then for the rice ball, since it's already white, I'm going to stamp with the black instead of the white. All right, now I'm going to let that dry, and we'll come back for the next round of stamps for the blacks of these eyes, and then the little white eye shine on these eyes, and we'll do the little mouth. Now that the white is dry, we'll go ahead and go back over with the black. It's the same thing where I just dip it in and stamp it. That one was a little bit cross-eyed, so I'm going to try to wipe it off with some water real quick while it is still wet. Okay. All right, we're gonna start over on that one. All right, and for the mouth, I use a mechanical pencil. This is actually 0.3 lead. I just dip it as well. And just draw it on. Sometimes it dries on there, so I just wipe it off and then re-dip. All right. ahead and do the blush real quick. And with it being a rubber tip, you can just scrape off the dried paint. And I just stamp it as well. The pink actually should be a little lighter because it's hard to see on that orange. I'm going to go ahead and mix it with a little bit of white in one of these cups. But you don't have to do the blush on yours. All of my illustrations have blush on them, so I just carry it over into my clay and resin work as well. And then for the rice ball, we're going to go back to the regular bright pink. And the rice ball can actually have the little eye shine added. Since it was painted black earlier, that's already dry. And I just make sure there's no paint left on the tip from before. And then just dip it into the white. And add a little dab at the top. And the black won't be dry yet on those two, so we'll come back in just a few minutes to finish that up. Now that the black is dry, we're going to go back in and do the little eye shine on the candy corn. Then once this dries, we will do the clear coat on top. And as far as the backing, I'm going to go ahead and make all of these magnets again. So it's going to be using these super strong magnets. And I'm going to adhere them with UV resin. Normally I use E6000 though, but I'm giving the UV resin a try to see if it holds up differently. The initial top coat I'm just going to dab on because sometimes the colors run, especially on these. I know the orange ran a little bit and the black will run. So I just dab it lightly. I always start with white first. That way, in case it does run, it's not going to affect the white if it's already been taken care of. I'm using a pretty big brush just so it covers more area. And after this initial coat of dabbing it on, the next time we can brush it on like normal because nothing will run at that point since it'll be sealed in. And since I jumped to the black instead of doing the orange and yellow, I'm going to rinse the brush before going back to it. Alright, now we're going to let that dry and we'll come back to it in just a couple of minutes to do the next coat. Now that that first coat is dry, I'm going to go back over everything. Then when this round dries, I'm going to do the UV resin and then we'll be finished. So for this last portion, I'm zoomed back out. We will be using the UV resin to adhere the magnet to the back. This is hard resin that I ordered online. It came from Japan. There's tons of different kinds out there though. I'm using the tile again. And I just poured a little bit of the resin in one of the mixing cups. Now for this guy, I'm going to put something under him or else the magnet is just going to slide around. Let's see, same with him. Try to flatten him out some. This one will be fine. This one will probably need something small under it too. Okay. So I'm using the back of one of those really cheap paint brushes. It's like 20 of them for $1. Just doing a little dab of it. Then dropping the magnet. Oops. Well, there it goes. Dropping it down on it. So that one's a little bit uneven too, so you can see it sliding around. So I'm gonna get something really small to put under it as well. Try to even that out. So it goes in the center. There we go. Oops. With the UV resin, it's not going to harden until I put it either under the UV lamp or put it outside. Oops. All right, we're going to just do 2 at a time because these magnets are super strong. So they are trying to attach to everything. So I'm going to move this aside. Just do these 2 for now. I'm actually going to swap that into a paper towel also. All right, I'm going to slide this into the UV light and hit 60 seconds. Let that cure. I'm going to go ahead and drop the magnets on these other 2 real quick. And then even that out. Okay, so that's done. Slide it out. Magnet secured on there. I'm going to switch it with these 2. Slide it back under. Do another 60 seconds. All right, and now these are secured on there. So hopefully you learned something from this video. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. I'm most active on Instagram. It's at Mimosa Studio, Mimosa Studio. And that also has a link in my bio that will take you to Facebook, email, Patreon, other methods of reaching me if you had any questions. Again, I'm very new at resin, but this method has been extremely easy for me. It's been something that I was able to make a piece start to finish relatively quickly, whereas the other poured silicone ones seem to have taken it was a big learning curve. I had a lot of mistakes on those, and then also you had to wait for them to dry, and then the clear resin had a 24-hour cure time. So it took a while to see any results. And with these, I can easily cast little guys in an hour. The painting process is what took so long, but it's really easy, really fun just to get all these little critters going. So, all right, thank you so much.